एक्सेस वेटची
येस
ओके. परत एकदा चेक करू, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड घेतो.
येस
आली ना फिशबोनची? ठीक आहे. ओके. We were talking about excess weight, excess dimension. When the casting develops more mass, it is mainly due to pattern or equipment failure. This can be unintentionally made, or sometimes the foundryman thinks that it's better to have machining allowance, excess machining allowance here and there, and thereby some allowance is added on as cast dimension as well. It's a very wrong practice, and I urge to all of you, do not add excess machining allowance to anything, because metallurgically, the metal which we lose during machining is the best quality of metal. The metal which solidifies early has developed more and more strength due to smaller grain size. And that is the exact metal which is on the skin of the casting, which we are removing by machining. So stick to it. No excess machining allowance. Whatever you save in the weight is the national saving, and you can ask for your benefit with your client as well, that by sticking to the proper dimensions or by sticking to lower side of the dimension, I am able to reduce 500 grams from this casting. So let us share this benefit. The buyer will take advantage of 250 grams. Let the foundry get advantage of 250 grams. No harm in it. But do not make the casting overweight. It's not good for anybody. So what can be the causes? Improper tooling we considered. Then the other cause is mold lifting or mold dilation. Why does the mold lift if there is no or low counterweight, or if there is no clamping? The mold may get lifted due to metal pressure or gas pressure. Side margins. If the side walls are too low, too thin, the side sand mass is too low, then it may bulge it may bulge or it may crack due to metal pressure. If ramming is not proper, the mold hardness is poor, then accompanied by excess temperature or excess fluidity, you can face mold dilation as well as metal penetration. So in all these cases, one has to take care that casting has to come conform to the desired geometry of as cast dimension. Poor surface finish. Every casting also has some aesthetic value. अभी वो जमाना गया कि भाई साहब आपका काम तो हो रहा है ना, फिर कास्टिंग दिखने में कैसा भी हो, आपको क्या? A foundry cannot ask such a question. There are standards, there are reference surface finish, and your casting has to qualify to that surface finish somewhat may. If by any means the surface finish of the casting falls below the acceptable limit, it is called as a rough casting or a poor surface finish. These are few photographs of rough surface finish. What can be the causes? First is coating failure. If the coating is too low or there is no coating at all, then the finish might get disturbed. Low volatile matter or low carbonaceous matter in your molding sand. Then the CO, carbon monoxide film, will not be developed, thereby hampering the surface finish. Poor compaction. If the compaction is very poor, then the sand particles are not tightly packed. There are gaps or voids in the mold itself, and thereby the metal penetrates into those gaps and the casting finish gets very rough. Also, such poor compaction may lead to sand wash, sand erosion, and a related defect of sand inclusion. Coarse sand or rough tooling. If your AFS number of or a sand is too coarse, then naturally the finish will be rough. If your tooling surface finish, pattern surface finish or die surface finish is too rough, that finish will be the best possible finish in the whole system. Because if the rough pattern gets delivers the impression in sand, it will be further rough, and the casting being solidified in that mold will be further rough. So there is a third degree deterioration with rough tooling. Excess fluidity associated with excess temperature. These two are from the metal side. If that is so, then in a fine mold also, the metal may penetrate within the sand particles and the casting finish may get disturbed. Failure in chemical properties. Whenever we are developing our own alloy at foundry, or we are using unknown input material, unknown scrap, then this is a common failure. Chemistry does not match. Even if we are using known scrap, then also if we are compelled to hold our metal for a longer time, zinc and sometimes tin and many times silicon, all these elements, they lose its existence in the liquid, they evaporate, and thereby the chemistry is disturbed. What can be the root causes? Wrong treatment. In case of phosphorus bronzes, phosphorus is an essential element in the chemistry, which is added during treatment. If the dose of phosphorus is insufficient, then naturally the casting will fail in chemistry for want of phosphorus. Wrong charge mix. If in any tin bronze or gunmetal, we are adding 1% or 1.5% of tin in charging, then that percent calculation may go wrong and our charge mix itself may go wrong. Wrong raw material. Both these, wrong charge mix as well as wrong raw material, are supervisory grade failures, and they can easily be corrected as well. Excess holding and excess temperature. Both these things lead to loss of volatile materials like zinc or sometimes tin, silicon, phosphorus, all these elements. They are lost in excess holding or excess temperature. Next part is failure in mechanical property. Herein I have written that if by any means the casting does not qualify to the standard limit, it's failure in mechanical property. Now this any means is all encompassing. Wrong raw material. If there is something wrong with your chemistry, then it fails to develop the proper matrix of the alloy and it fails to attain its strength. So is with wrong treatment. Treatment, metal treatment for any metal is the birthplace of your casting. People say that mold is the birthplace, but much before that, the properties of casting are defined by the treatment in the metal in the liquid state. Nucleation, deoxidation, degassing, all these treatments are performed in the furnace itself. And hence, if something goes wrong in that treatment, then casting may fail in mechanical properties. Although chemistry is wrong, right, casting may fail in mechanical properties. Why? If nucleation is imperfect or insufficient, then the grain size, desired grain size will not be attained. The casting will develop coarser grains. Casting may develop dispersed shrinkage or micro shrinkage. In both the cases, the mechanical properties are not attained. How do we check mechanical properties? It is by destructive testing. We take a test bar, maybe separately cast test bar, or maybe from the casting itself, or maybe a witness port test bar. We machine it to a certain cross section. We allow a certain gauge length depending on the standards, and we gradually load the test bar in clamp condition so as to lead to its failure. We load it till it fails, till it breaks. And before its breakage, it starts expanding or it starts yielding. So that point of yield gives you the yield strength, and the point of breakage gives you the UTS, ultimate tensile strength. When we break some casting, if you observe the fracture, you can see the grains of the casting clearly. So what happens during this mechanical failure? Grains in one part of the test bar are joined with other part of the test bar on the grain boundary. When we separate these two pieces of the test bar, the grains dissociate from each other on the grain boundary. Grain on left hand side gets separated from the grains on the right hand side. And this process in metallurgy is called as slip of grains, SLIP. The energy required to cause a slip for a particular alloy system is constant, irrespective of the grain size. That means if in a particular alloy chemistry, the grain slip energy is 1 unit, then it will remain 1 unit for a grain size of 100 microns as well as for a grain size of 200 microns. So what we are doing? We are dissociating grains in a defined cross-sectional area, 10 mm diameter test bar, 50 mm gauge length. So in that 10 mm diameter, pi by 4 d square, pi by 4 into 100, in that particular square mm area, let us assume that there are 5,000 grains. So in that particular combination, the UTS will be 5,000 units. If by some means my grain size expands or I develop coarser grains, then naturally in that particular 10 mm diameter, only 3,000 grains will be accommodated. So the slip energy required to cause a failure will be 3,000 units. So the test bar will fail at 3,000 units instead of 5,000 units. Similarly, if I am able to achieve finer grains, further finer grains, and instead of 5,000, I can accommodate 6,000 grains in the same diameter, then my UTS will increase. It will supersede, it will exceed the standard limit. So treatment is the most important part in any casting. Improper cooling. If this cooling I am talking about after solidification, some contraction strain or some stresses may get developed in it. Sometimes a fine microscopic crack may get developed, and thereby the metal matrix will not remain homogeneous, and that will fail abruptly. Improper solidification. If during solidification there is some hindrance, then there will be grain growth, there will be segregation. If you have lead in the matrix, then the lead may ooze out or it may form smears. It may refill the cavities created within the matrix, but it will not be a one-piece casting. It will give a false appearance. And such a casting will definitely fail at a very early stage. Any other defects, it may be micro shrinkage, gas porosity, pinhole porosity, or most common defect is inclusion, oxide inclusion. Any entrapped oxide inclusion also disturbs the homogeneity of your metal matrix, and thereby you lose the mechanical properties. Now we go to most haunting defects. The first one is shrinkage. What is a shrinkage? Shrinkage is a cavity with rough interior and irregular in shape, usually found at the center of thick section or at the sharp junction of thick and thin section. The shrinkage can further be classified as open shrinkage, internal shrinkage, spongy shrinkage, or micro shrinkage. Let us first understand from where this shrinkage comes. Everybody knows that whenever we heat some metal, that hot metal expands. That is called as coefficient of thermal expansion. When the hot metal becomes liquid, that liquid also further expands. And I give you an example. Say I have got 1000 cc, 1000 cubic centimeter of XYZ metal. And my solid to liquid coefficient of expansion is say 6%. Then in liquid condition, that metal will occupy 6% excess volume. It will become 1060 cc, 1060 cubic centimeters. Now, my desired mold is also of 1000 cc capacity. So if I pour that metal in that 1000 cc mold, let us assume that it's a cubical shaped mold with all metallic walls. And once I pour 1000 cc, I close the top wall also with the metallic piece. So what will happen? My crucible will still possess those 60 cc of liquid metal. My mold of 1000 cc cubic size will be fully filled and its walls, all 6 walls will be immediately solidified. Now this 1000 cc will further try to contract because it is in expanded shape. Its volume is expanded by 6%. Its walls have solidified. The solidifying front is advancing inwards towards the center. So from all 6 sides, the dendrites will grow towards the center, and one moment there will be no further path to grow because it will end up in a cavity of those 6%. This particular cube will develop a cavity, a void within itself, which is equivalent to the leftover metal held in the crucible. This is called as a shrinkage cavity, and this is the phenomenon of shrinkage. To overcome shrinkage, we have to pour excess metal, thereby allowing liquid metal to feed this cavity till the end and take out that particular cavity of the total metal mass into the non-casting area, which is called as the feeder. In case of aluminum bronzes, this problem is very, very severe because solid to liquid expansion is to the tune of 13%. 13%. 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13% 13 In case of gunmetals, it is little bit moderate because this expansion is hardly 3%. In case of aluminium, it is 6.5%. So the severity of shrinkage differs from metal to metal. But the phenomenon of shrinkage one has understood now. Now, how can we reduce the severity of shrinkage? First and foremost is the feeding or providing proper size feeders at proper location. But if we consider that there are some isolated heavy sections which cannot be fed by a separate feeder, then what will happen? Naturally, along with the wall thickness, whatever the part of that heavy section gets solid, it will become solid, no doubt in it. But the central liquid portion will develop a tiny shrinkage. This is where nucleation takes a big role. Nucleation is the process of creating or inducing the solidification within the liquid throughout the liquid by providing artificially induced solidification sites, which are called as nuclei. In case of gunmetals, there is a trace of nickel allowed, or in many bronzes, nickel is allowed to certain extent. In some cases 0.2%, in some cases 0.5%, in some cases up to 1%. People usually do not add nickel because it is the most expensive material next to tin. But remember one thing, nickel is the proper and good nucleant for any copper-based alloy. So even if you add hardly 0.1% of nickel in your metal, it will immediately nucleate the metal and the metal will solidify all over. So in the first example wherein we saw that we are solidifying a cube, let us assume that that cube is filled with some 100,000 solid particles or 100,000 nucleons. And at those 100,000 sites also, solidification will begin layer by layer on those tiny dots. So whatever is the 6.56% shrinkage, that is 60 cc shrinkage, in the first case wherein there is no nucleation, it will get concentrated at the center of the cube. In the second case, once the solidification begins from the sides as well as from the 100,000 nucleation sites, the solidification will end once one solid particle touches the other solid particle. Thereby, this 60 cc or 6% shrinkage cavity will get equally distributed amongst those 100,000 grains. Instead of getting concentrated at a single spot, it will be diluted or it will be distributed at those 100,000 grains, thereby losing its severity. So shrinkage can be catered by feeding as well as nucleation. On the left hand side, you see shrinkage cavity opened after machining or after drilling. In the middle photo, you see the shrinkage. It's a multiple defect rather. It's shrinkage, a tiny gas hole as well as inclusion. This portion is shrinkage. This is a tiny gas hole. This is also a gas hole. This is a shrinkage. This is shrinkage. And this particular thing is inclusion. On the right hand side is severe shrinkage in dispersed form. It is not concentrated at a single spot, but it is all over. Now this is open shrinkage at the junction. Thick section, thin section junction, the shrinkage gets opened. This is open shrinkage at the surface. So what can be the causes? On the metal side, excess temperature and poor nucleation. From the method side, improper feeding, improper chilling, and geometric limitation. Earlier we discussed about feeding. If the feeding is not designed properly and it is not connected at the proper spot, it will fail to feed. and thereby leading to shrinkage in the casting. Alternatively, we can control shrinkage by chilling. If we can create solidification by artificial means in the heavy section by adding a chill to it, then the shrinkage will be gone. It will not be developed. If it is not proper, then there will be shrinkage. Geometric limitation. Like I said, some isolated heavy section, then it will develop shrinkage. In the next slide we go. Pinholes. Pinholes are tiny spherical cavities with clean shining interiors. Remember these words. In the shrinkage, we talked about irregular, rough interiors with irregular shape. In case of pinholes as well as blowholes, we will be seeing that there are spherical cavities. It's round or rounded in shape with clean and shining interior, usually spread all over the casting. These are entrapped gas bubbles of usually dissolved gas, which remains within the matrix even after solidification. It does not escape. These are few photographs of surface pinholes. And these are typical photographs of dissolved gas pinholes. The left-hand side is the pinholes visible after machining, and on the right-hand side, the same component is checked with dye penetration, and it is revealing further severe porosity. What can be the causes? Dissolved gases in the mold. I mean to say, the gases getting dissolved in the metal within the mold during pouring. Dissolved gases in the furnace. The gases getting dissolved in the metal in the furnace itself. Over treatment. Degassing is a inherent part of metal treatment, and it is obvious that hydrogen will get dissolved in majority of the metals because moisture is present in the air. Although we are melting in induction furnace, we are not melting in vacuum furnace. So moisture, atmospheric moisture gets contact with the metal and it readily dissolves. We have to take care, we have to take it out by degassing. Degassing can be done by two means. First is by generating a non-reactive or inert gas within the metal by some chemical reaction. For aluminium, a popular reagent is hexachloroethane. For copper-based alloys, a popular reagent is calcium carbonate. When we immerse calcium carbonate in the liquid, it dissociates and carbon dioxide gas is developed. Carbon dioxide does not dissolve in copper-based alloys, and thereby this oozing gas, while passing out from the metal, it takes away the dissolved hydrogen and the metal is degassed. Alternatively, one can purge inert gas by means of purging lance or a degassing rotor. The gas might be carbon dioxide or nitrogen or argon. Improper furnace atmosphere. If one is melting the metal in a gas-fired or oil-fired furnace, then remember that gas or oil are carbohydrates, or sorry, hydrocarbons, not carbohydrates, they are hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons is a chain of carbon and hydrogen. So in combustion, the carbon delivers carbon dioxide and hydrogen delivers H2O or water vapor. At any temperature above 600 degrees, this water vapor becomes volatile and the hydrogen and oxygen, they coexist. When they come in contact with molten metal, the oxygen reacts with molten metal, developing oxides, and the hydrogen dissolves in molten metal, leading to phenol porosity. So, in case of gas or oil-fired furnace, we have to take care that the flue gases do not come in contact with the metal. This cannot be done for reverberatory furnaces wherein large pool of liquid metal is handled. But for crucible furnaces, at least we can take care of this. Moisture in mold or moisture in coating. This particular fact, the moisture in mold or moisture in coating, has got direct relation with gases getting dissolved within the mold. Because from where the gases will come, it will come from this moisture. Blowholes. Blowholes are larger size, round or rounded cavities with shining interiors, having larger size than pinhole. This can be entrapped gas bubble, this can be from mold, this can be from core, this can be from coating, or this can be entrapped air. How do they look? Round or rounded, shining from interior. Now, when we talk of entrapped air, the gating issue and venting issue are the root causes. If by any means a vortex is formed immediately in front of the gate, naturally the eye of the vortex develops some partial vacuum. And in that partial vacuum, a small portion of air within the mold gets caught. That air remains in that location till the time that vortex is on. Means till the time your casting is completely filled, that gate will remain on, the flow will be on, the vortex will be on, and the tiny air bubble will be caught at that location. Now, if you consider the 200 mm height of the casting and a vortex formed at the bottom of it, so a tiny air bubble being caught at the bottom of the casting. Once the casting is fully filled and it comes out from the exit riser, top riser, that is the time we stop pouring. That is the time when the flow will stop. That is the time when the vortex will stop. That is the time when the bubble will get escaped. But it is not always possible for that bubble to escape through that particular height because the casting has already started solidifying. The mold wall has taken the heat from it and the casting has become sluggish. So this tiny bubble remains within the casting forever and it gets exposed during machining. So that is the blowhole caused by entrapped air due to vortex formation in the gating. Another option is waterfall effect. If you are pouring from top and waterfall like situation happens of the metal, then air within the metal stream and the mold wall gets caught within the metal and it may leave a big depression or it may end up in many dispersed blowholes at that wall. Venting issue. If by some means at some spot air venting is not possible or permeability is an issue, then that excess air may lead to a back pressure, a sink, or in some cases it may lead to blowhole. Okay, entrapped air is a repetition of all these things. Gas from the core. Apart from air, from where the gases can come, it is from the combustion of core binder, or it is from evaporation of mold binder, it is from the combustion of mold binder, or it is from coating. From all these spots, gas may arise and it may get entrapped due to getting or venting issues. Now, why does a blowhole remain shining from interior, from inside? And why a shrinkage is a rough cavity? Shrinkage is the volume remaining vacant due to liquid to solid contraction. So the dendrites, which are the solidifying front, they have a needle-like structure. They are sharp and rough in appearance, and they are coming together from all sides towards the cavity. In that cavity, there is nothing to prevent these dendrites from coming in. So naturally, from all sides, these rough dendrites end up forming a cavity. So the cavity is rough and irregular in size, and once you cut, it has got sharp and crooked interior. Whereas in case of a blowhole, air or gas or water vapor is already present there. It's a physical property of any fluid to accommodate itself in smallest surface area. So by geometry, it is clear that here is such an entity which accommodates largest volume in smallest surface area. So any fluid, let it be a water droplet, let it be a metal droplet, or let it be a gas. Once it comes in a different surrounding, it takes shape of a sphere. That is why the blowholes are round or rounded. Now, during solidification, this gas or this water vapor remains there and it is developing its vapor pressure on the advancing metal front, thereby preventing the dendrites from coming or entering this gas bubble. These dendrites get blocked and hence the surface of the blowhole gets compacted or the grain at the grain size gets refined. Hence the surface of the blowhole is shining, smooth and shining. Inclusion.
Sir, can we stop because I think 45 minutes already over. So we'll rejoin
45
again.
minutes are over.
Yeah,
Okay,
will
then
be back.
if people are willing to continue, we will continue for the third session immediately because hardly
Yes,
three
yes,
or four slides are remaining.
yes, yes, yes. Immediately
Okay,
we'll start
we will
immediately.
continue immediately. Yes,
Yeah, because there will be some question answer they has to be
yes, yes,
answered.
yes, yes. Yes.